welcome to India Now. I'm your host Isha Mishra.
This is your host Sanskar Tiwari.
And we welcome you to this special segment. We're being joined by senior journalist, filmmaker and the founder of AsiaNet, Mr. Sashi Kumar. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Isha.
Right, so we begin with speaking about the media ecosystem at the moment. India ranks in the World Press Freedom Index at 142. What's your take on this, sir?
It's a matter of great concern that India is sliding in the World Press Freedom Index, and we've never been up there. We've always been 130s and below. So that's a comment on the nature of our democracy. And so it's, if you look at the World Press Freedom Index, the top slots are taken by the Scandinavian countries. It'll be Finland, Sweden, Norway, countries like that, invariably the first 5 or 6 slots. And there's a reason for that, because, freedom of speech and expression means not saying what people like to hear. It means being able to say things which also offend people. The right to offend is part of freedom of speech and expression. Not hate speech, by the way. Hate speech is very different from the right to offend. Offensive speech and hate speech are very, very different. In India, we have hate speech, paradoxically. Hate speech is allowed, but not offensive speech. So that's why we are caught up in this paradox. So there are a number of things wrong with the Indian situation, and that's just one that I was pointing out. So although we do have freedom of speech and expression in the Constitution, Article 19, 1A and G speak about all of that, and the freedom of the press is derived from that article. It's a fundamental right in our Constitution. In actual practice, we know that there is it's a cliche now to call it that, a chilling effect. People have to, worry about, there's freedom of speech, as I often say, but no freedom after speech. So that's a big problem in India. So these are all the reasons, and these are not new reasons. These have been there. It's got slightly worse, not slightly, it's got more acutely worse under the present government. But the Congress was not, shall we say, qualitatively different. The difference between the Congress and the BJP in terms of freedom of speech is only one of degree, not of kind. So that's where we're at.
So not only press freedom, like freedom of expression and speech,
but also Indian democracy is also in question around the world, and particularly in current regime. It's like all other countries are questioning that whether India is democratic or not. So in Karnataka, we saw a turmoil where one particular community was not able to follow their practice, and other community people were saying, why you are doing that? So sir, how do you see this? Like one particular community, some sentiments are getting hurted. So how do you see this?
Yeah. Yes, on the first part, yes, it's true that India has also been, is in a club of shame, if you like. It's been called an elected autocracy now. The organizations, independent organizations, autonomous organizations which audit democracies are hesitant to call India a true democracy anymore. For very obvious reasons, because we have a majoritarian mindset now. Majoritarianism is not democratic. Majoritarianism is next to totalitarianism. It is the law of the majority, of the law of the brawn, the law of muscle power, so that's where we are at now. And the reason, of course, is minority bashing. The reason is a consistent, sustained attack on the rights of the minorities, on the very existence of the minorities in many ways.
And kind of insidious hair splitting when it comes to the rights of the minorities. For instance, I don't see how a judge in any court can decide that hijab is not inconsistent with Muslim practice, or it's a practice, it's a way of life. It's another matter that there is a debate, even in Muslim society, on the need to abolish hijab.
Hijab. So you can take, you can have a modernist view and say, I can certainly say that in my view, Muslims should get rid of the practice of wearing hijab. Having said that, they have every right to continue to wear the hijab, and I have every right to say to express my opinion. But I don't have any right to enforce my view on it, right? Nor does, I think, in my view, it's even beyond the scope of a judge in a court of law to arbitrate or to decide on cultural matters like this, what I eat, what I wear. You can't say that. So it's clearly a majoritarian mindset, and the constitutional forces, those who are supposed to safeguard our constitution, are also capitulating to that majoritarian mindset, and they're anticipating the will of the ruler. And you find, therefore, that in terms of the executive, the judiciary, the legislature, in all these areas, this is a new alarming trend. So I want to qualify it by again saying whether to have hijab or not, whether there should be personal law in India or not, is a matter of opinion. There should be a debate. There should continue to be. There are a number of Muslim friends who say they think hijab practice is actually keeping Islamic society back. The Islamic society is not up there because of these self-imposed restrictions, and that ultimately the way it works out is that it works against the woman. Although there are women who say we choose this dress style and we see it as a expression of our liberty, of our choice of what we need to wear. So all of this is what a healthy democracy should be, but it's going wayward. The problem is it's careening off the track because we are choosing this in order to victimize, to stigmatize the minorities in this country.
So speaking of majoritism, the Kashmir Files has been breaking all records, and especially with the Prime Minister vouching for it. It's been tax-free now, and people are watching it, and emotional wounds have been reopened. So will it be fair to compare it with the Triumph of the Will?
It would be fair to the extent that Leni Riefenstahl's The Triumph of the Will, as you know, was a product of Nazi Germany, which celebrated Nazism. It celebrated Nazism and looked at how Nazism creates a new civilization, how it creates a civilization which is the envy of the world. I don't know if you've seen Leni Riefenstahl's work. You'll find how she handles this. Is your multi-camera setup is nothing. She'd have hundreds of cameras covering a procession in those days, and there will be individual emotion, there'll be the collective, there'll be the mammoth rally. So at various levels she was actually handling and dissecting, shall we say, a particular event or a particular situation. And it was technologically marvelous. And there's no doubt that she was a consummate filmmaker, and she had, of course, the entire apparatus of the state at her disposal, and she could ask for anything she wanted. And that's why you'll find those huge rallies of the Nazi ranks or the German army, going into war, or athletics in Germany. In other words, proving that this is the true Aryan race and that we are at the acme of civilization. That was the basic idea of the Leni Riefenstahl production. Kashmir Files can't be compared to that by any stretch of imagination, but it's tempting to do that because you keep hearing that it's such a well-made film. Now, if a film is dangerous and well-made, it's doubly dangerous, right? If it's dangerous and sloppy, it's that much less dangerous. Which is why this comparison with I'm the first time I'm hearing this from you, but I think there is an extent. It's opposite to some. It is probably relevant to an extent. But I think the Kashmir Files is important because it is of course what happened to the Pandits in Kashmir is terrible. Today, as we speak, Mehbooba in Kashmir as herself said that the sufferings of the Muslims in Kashmir are nothing compared to the sufferings of the Pandits. That is Kashmiriyat. That you find the majority community saying that what we did to the Pandits is far worse than what the Muslims have suffered in Kashmir, or are suffering even now. Will any Hindu say that of Hindus or a Hindu leader, or Hindus will, I think, will any BJP or RSS leader say that today? That is the difference, So Kashmir Files, the filmmaker is a well-known acolyte of the BJP and and perhaps of the RSS. And what happened there was terrible. It's also true, it's a largely untold story. There's not been a film on it. But when you compare that with, is it comparable at all with what happened in Gujarat in terms of the numbers of the people killed? particularly the pogrom, after, of course, what happened in the train, and then what happened, thousands of people have died. Is it comparable at any level with what happened to Sikhs in 1984? At least 3,000, by a conservative estimate, Sikhs have been killed in the most brutal manner. Here the numbers are in the order of 300 plus, even by the official accounts, even today's Government of India accounts, I think 360 or 350 or something. To call that a genocide. And then when you say you can't call this, isn't 300 people too, is it a small number? Of course it's not a small number. Then don't use the term genocide at all. Say 300 people died, 3,000 people died, 5,000 people died. So Kashmir Files is a deliberate attempt to create further division in an already polarized society, which is why the Prime Minister finds it, a very, very useful idea to commend the film. But he goes to great extents to say those who don't like it can express the opposite point of view. But why are we opposing this film? That's what we're doing. We're opposing the film. We can't stop the film. The government is supporting the film. Who can stop the film? The Central Board of Film Censors, you've given it tax exemption. Nobody's stopping the film. People are watching the film. People are watching the film and saying what they have to. People who are watching the film and don't like it are saying what they have to. There's no need to push back on that, right? And to victimize those who criticize the film. So I've not seen the film, so I'm not able to speak about the. But from all that I've read and heard, and from the author of the film, and the filmmaker's credentials and bona fides, it's a very, very suspect film. It is not an honest it's not an honest artistic intellectual piece of work. It is meant as a propaganda arm. It is meant as a cat's paw to serve a particular, shall we say, unfortunate and condemnable attack, again the mindset, to promote this mindset of against the minorities in this country.
Rightly said. It's really unfortunate that we talk about Kashmir Files, but no one talk about what happened in Gujarat or what Gujarat Files is all about. Yes. Sir, recently, from the past 1 month, two major things happened. Like if we are talking about this thing. Firstly, the hijab rule. Secondly, this Kashmir Files being released. So people out in the country are relating this as a wave of nationalism, while the current regime is also portraying it like that, nationalism only. So any special comment on this? Is it right to connect this to nationalism thing?
This is not nationalism, this is chauvinism, right? There's a difference with nationalism and chauvinism. There's a difference with nationalism and patriotism. Those who are nationalists today, who are shouting from their rooftops about nationalism, where were they when India was fighting for its independence? They were hiding under their bloody cots. They were not even out there fighting for independence. How many of them went to jail for fighting for independence? Veer Savarkar went to jail and wrote a craven letter of apology to the British colonial masters, saying, "I'll be with you, please let me go." And they freed him. I mean, their track record is abysmally shameful in terms of nationalism. And for them to speak about nationalism is a paradox, of the first water. So, I mean, I don't even take this whole nationalistic argument seriously. True patriots are those who believe in our country. Of course, we need patriots here. We are all patriots, and which includes Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, Jains. That's what India is. India is not India if it's just the Hindus, So I think there's this whole nationalist argument. See, they have a problem. The problem with the Hindutva, not as against Hinduism. Hinduism, I think, is a wonderful philosophy, a wonderful religion, a wonderful way of life, which is all encompassing, which is inclusive. The problem with Hindutva is it's a narrow kind of brazen anti-minority mindset. Its job is to keep othering everyone. The problem with them is that they have a huge historic inferiority complex. It's a paradox that the majority, 80% of the who pretend to speak for 80% of the population of this country, have the biggest, shall we say, inferiority complex, because they knew they had no role in fighting for independence. They knew that they were not martyrs when the nation called them to be martyrs. They knew that they were hiding out there. They were not out there fighting for independence. And now, for them to speak about nationalism and pull all kinds of characters out of the closet, their so-called, and to celebrate people like Godse, who killed Mahatma Gandhi. What kind of nationalist is Godse? He's a murderer, plain and simple, So it's a mockery of the idea of nationalism.
I think the idea of nationalism has been spoken about a lot lately, but the whole concept of it is slightly imaginative. And will it be fair to say that the BJP or the ruling government is using nationalism and using it to unite or create an imbalance between the two communities?
Of course they're doing that. I mean, that's precisely the point. They're using all these terms in a manner that is purely electoral. It is purely electoral. It has nothing to do with the unity and integrity of India. It has nothing to do with the diversity of India. It has nothing to do about living in peace and harmony. Because the moment there is peace and harmony, they are finished.
Right.
You see, there's a famous biography of Hitler where the punchline is, in normalcy, a nothing. In chaos, a titan. That was what Hitler was. You can say that about the Hindutva. You can take about the Parivar, Sangh Parivar actually. At least the crust of the core group. That in normalcy, there's normalcy. That's it. I mean, they have no agenda. They have nothing to talk about. They need chaos, right? So they'll create fire and destruction and pillage and killing people for eating what they think they ate, or what they may not even have eaten, for dressing in a particular way, or imagine love jihads, are kind of destroying the culture and civilization of this country, and so on and so forth. So this is the problem: normalcy and nothing, in chaos, titans. So you need to keep chaos going, from chaos to chaos to chaos.
So, India follows a federal system of government.
In states, there is governor who is supposed to work independently without any interference of central government. But right now, we are looking that they are influenced by the mentality of what central says. Like in West Bengal, it is there. In Rajasthan, it is there. In union territories, it's there. Like lieutenant governors are just a puppet of what central wants to do. So, again, it implies that democracy is in danger. So your special comments on this?
The role of the governor has become redundant, obviously. I think we should get rid of that role. There's no need for a governor. It's just a waste of public money. You have these huge Raj Bhavans where this man is lolling around, and when he's asked to impose president's rule because one party wants to come to power, he steps in. I mean, it's a ridiculous position in my view. In post-independent India, maybe for some time it was justified. In a true democracy, there's no need for a role of a governor. Even if there were, for reasons of decorum and reasons of ceremony or ritual, if you want to lend, like the Queen is there, but everyone knows. But look at the way the Queen is discussed in the British media, very, very irreverently. Those who want to discuss her irreverently do so very irreverently. There's no problem. Here, the governor is not a governor, that's the problem. He's a viceroy of the center. Right? It's like the old colonial system where they'll send out a viceroy, and the viceroy's mandate is very clear, that protect our interests. In England, that was in the colonial. Here, Delhi is saying protect our interests, protect the interests of the center and of the party which is ruling the center. And governors do that very faithfully. They become kind of, what are called constitutional lapdogs. Constitutional lapdogs of those in power. It's constitutional, unfortunately. You have a position like that. So that's the role of the governor. And I think unfortunately, this is true not just of the BJP government, it's been true of the Congress as well. They have misused governors. They have misused governors again and again and again in various states. Governors are used to wrest, shall we say, victory from the jaws of defeat in an election. They would lose. I mean, we've seen that. You lose an election, and yet the governor will decide which party has the first shot at, forming a government. And because the governor indicates that this party is the one he favors, then IRMs and GIRMs begin to operate. You start purchasing MLAs. So the governor, if you look at it, is the root of most of the corrupt practices. Is the kind of figurehead, if you like. Constitutional, I'm not talking about any individual. position has become a rallying point for buying and selling MLAs, buying and selling votes for, for disrespecting the mandate of the people. It represents just about everything that's wrong now in a democracy. And I can't think of 3 or 4 positive features of a governor being there. What exactly does the governor do? Except that it's a big drain on our taxes.
So you mentioned buying and selling of votes, and the credibility of the Election Commission has been under the scanner, with parties like the BSP and the Congress alleging that the EVM was hacked. Do you think it's a fair move to go back to the ballot paper? How credible is it?
I'm not sure that we have actually established that EVMs are being hacked at a level or on a scale that demands that we need to go back to the ballot paper. Physical. I think EVM is, I would still maintain that it's a technological advancement. There are serious concerns about the way the Election Commission or members of the Commission, some of them behave. They seem to be looking for a nod from those in power, whereas it is a constitutionally independent and autonomous body. Particularly during elections, they are in complete charge. Having said that, I still think that along with the judiciary, the Election Commission continues to be more good than bad. But it's true that it's not all good, and that's certainly not all good. But that's my current assessment of the. But there is legitimate cause for concern. So there's legitimate cause for concern about the way the courts were going. However, sometimes courts dig in and they say thus far no further. And repeatedly, I think when things looked hopeless, courts have stepped in, particularly the highest court of the land, or certain high courts as well. But then what one court does, another court undoes, like the hijab issue in Karnataka and so on. So this is the process, and they are not fulfilling, I would say, their constitutional mandate, the letter and spirit of the constitutional mandate. And if they did that, India would be a far better democracy than it is.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us your time. It was really great having discussion with you.
Thank you.
This is Sanskar Tiwari
This is Isha Mishra.
for ACJ News.